I'm a cybersecurity analyst.
How long have you been doing this?
About 5 years now.
How much do you make?
About 150 a year.
Do you feel fairly compensated?
I feel good.
What kind of college degree did you have? Like, was that a real prerequisite? Was it necessary?
Yeah, I would say a college degree was necessary. I have a bachelor's in information technology, but I went to school online the entire time. It definitely opened the door.
What are some other pros and cons of your job?
Pros are it's like remote. I don't really have to go anywhere. That's really good. Some cons are like a lot of my team is in India, so it's like time difference and meeting wise. Sometimes it can get a little stressful.
What pieces of advice do you have for anyone interested in tech, cybersecurity, anything to add?
Do it. Just get into cybersecurity. I preach it like it's the gospel. Certifications are huge. You get a degree and a certification, you're golden.
Do you know what the career progression looks like in your role? Like, how high does it go? Like, 150 is so awesome. Like, what does the future hold?
You can go up to management. You can be like a CISM, which is a Certified Information Security Manager. You can make upwards to 300, 500K bonuses. It never stops, but you got to be content where you're at and keep grinding.
I have my own designer vintage store.
How did you get into vintage?
I was selling on Depop during college time, and then I graduated during the pandemic, so it was super difficult to find a job. And so I was like, you know what, this is my opportunity to really go after what I want to do.
How much do you make doing what you do?
I actually just did my taxes, so I have an exact number. I made $83,000. I get to do what I love, so I never thought I'd be able to make this like a living and do it full time.
How were you able to turn this into a business?
I think just being authentic to myself and posting on Instagram, I realized a lot of businesses sometimes don't connect with their customers, and so really putting a face to who I was and what I believed in, I was able to find people that also are really passionate about sustainability and all that.
What are some of the pros and cons of your role?
Pros is being creative and getting to kind of experiment with different things. Cons would be the fact that you have to take on a lot of roles, and it sometimes feels like you don't really have a day off because you're always working and doing different things.
What is your favorite thing about owning your own business?
Getting to be my own boss, setting my own hours, and just doing what I love.
What pieces of advice would you share with anyone interested in being an entrepreneur? What have you learned so far?
Definitely don't let people pass on their limiting beliefs onto you. When I first wanted to start this business, I had a close friend tell me that I wasn't going to be able to make money doing it, that it's just not something that works. And sometimes people don't mean it in a way of harm, they're just trying to look out for you. But if you believe in yourself and your dreams and your goals, then you should still go for it anyway.
I do content strategy and presidential comms.
And how much do you make doing what you do?
$78K.
Do you feel fairly compensated?
I do, yeah.
How long have you been doing it?
2 years with this particular job, but overall 5 to 6 years in content strategy.
What's your favorite platform to use?
I go between TikTok and Instagram a lot. I think community-wise, TikTok has a really good leverage there to kind of just grow that piece with people who are familiar with different topics and being similar to you. But I do think Instagram has the capabilities just to kind of build that niche in terms of specific insights that you're looking for.
What are some of the pros and cons of your job?
I'd say for sure kind of always being on the clock. So just kind of being prepared for that. Definitely having time management skills is definitely helpful. So you're kind of just able to prioritize, predict a lot. You won't have that much stress on yourself.
If you could describe your role in one sentence, what would you say?
Ever changing. It's flexible. It's never the same day. So I do love that. It keeps you on your toes and you have to be adaptable with the market.
What are some pieces of advice you'd share for anyone who wants to work in your industry, or what have you learned?
I think the most important thing that I've learned is always seeing what you can take away from the experience or the content that you're building out and seeing how you can improve for next time. Not being too hard on yourself because it's never going to be perfect, but if you have that consistency, you're going to get there.
I am a building automation systems recruiter.
How much do you make?
I make $37.50 a month base, but uncapped commission.
Do you feel fairly compensated?
Absolutely.
How long have you been doing this?
About 8 months.
Is that total experience? Like, how did you get into the role?
I've always enjoyed talking to recruiters. They were great in finding me positions, and I was always grateful, and now I want to give back and do the same thing for others.
What are some of the pros and cons of your role?
Pros, you get to speak with a lot of people on a day-to-day basis, and you negotiate contracts, and you do find out about salaries. Salary is a motivator for most people, so you definitely get to be a part of that and help them out as well, and everybody wins.
So pay transparency is important to you as a recruiter?
Oh, absolutely. It's important to my clients and the candidates I represent as well.
What pieces of advice would you have for anyone who's interested in doing your role? Like, what has helped you grow?
Persistence. Always be persistent. It's a sales job. So always make the calls, follow up with your candidates, follow up with your clients, start early, work hard, and persistence, persistence, and persistence.
I'm a senior web designer.
How much do you make?
I make $175K.
How long have you been doing it?
5 years. I graduated in 2017.
Do you feel fairly compensated?
No, I am underpaid. So based on my market research, I should be closer to about 220 to 230. I can't complain, but you got to get what you're worth in the market.
What are some of the pros and cons of your job?
Fully remote. I haven't been to the office in 3 years. It's pretty straightforward, but it depends on if you like coding or not. I love coding. I've been doing it since I was 5. It's not crazy challenging. Good work-life balance. I never work more than 40 hours a week, but you don't get overtime. So sometimes when you do, you're on salary. You just got to put in that work. You learn a lot of job availability. I can basically pivot anywhere and go to any company. It's a lot of fun, but some days it will just drive you crazy. Like you're trying to debug something like in the code and you just have to work for hours and hours and hours. There's no obvious solution and you just got to beat your head against the wall until you figure it out.
What pieces of advice would you give for anyone interested in doing your role? Like, what helped you get into it?
So I did get a bachelor's degree in computer science at Penn State, but you don't need a degree to do a lot of this stuff. I think it can get you in the door a bit. You can learn all this stuff yourself for free online. I learned 80% of everything I know just on my own at home, playing around, writing games.
I'm a licensed customer service associate.
How long have you been doing that?
A year.
How much do you make?
About $55,000 with the bonus.
Do you feel fairly compensated?
Maybe, I don't know, because it depends on how busy the call center.
How is your job? Like, what are some of the favorite things that you like to do?
It was very, very busy with back-to-back calls, which was very hard, but they do care, I guess, because they did hire more people, and so now the calls haven't been like so back-to-back, so it's been positive in that sense that it's just like there's some downtime and things like that.
What pieces of advice do you have for anyone interested in your role? Like, what have you learned?
The way I found this job was through a Facebook job group, so just be applying to different places and just you enjoy talking with people, and it's a remote job.
Do you have like any funny stories doing customer care?
I mostly work with people over 65. They have, their personalities, but then sometimes there are some kind of rude people, so it's a balance.
I'm a loan officer.
How long have you been doing it?
For 2 years.
How much do you make?
It varies. My first year, because the market was really good, I made 150. But then this year, or just last year, is 80. The economy is different. But I think that's the biggest key. What I really love about you guys is everybody needs to prioritize and manage their money well.
What pieces of advice, as someone who works in finance, would you have for people to get started in that?
Just understand where your money goes. That's the biggest thing. Working with the banker or just getting educated is very key.
What are some of the pros and cons of your role?
I understand my money better because now I understand a lot of other people's budgets.
What pieces of advice would you share with anyone interested in also working in your industry or just career advice in general?
Definitely from my own interviews, trying to find mentorship in the banking finance world, because in 2020 when the pandemic happened, I got laid off because I was working at a gym. All gyms were closed, but luckily my cousin ended up being the office manager for a mortgage company. Yeah. It's about networking, meeting cool people like you.
I'm a graduate research assistant.
How much do you make doing what you do?
I make $30K per year.
Do you feel fairly compensated?
I'm satisfied with my current salary, but I like to be increased.
What are you researching?
I'm research in the area of disaster resilience. My degree is civil engineering.
What's your favorite thing about your role?
My favorite thing about my role is that I connect to many scholars, and also I connect to young generation, and also I'm updated with new ideas in my field.
What are some of the cons of your role?
Cons of my role is I think it's a lot of uncertainty and also it's stressful. It's not work-life balance.
What are some pieces of advice for others interested in research or in your role in general?
My piece of advice is that to connect to other fellow graduate research assistants and also have a mentor, have a good connection with your advisor.
I'm a video marketer for the home service industry.
How much do you make doing what you do?
Right now, $60K.
Do you feel fairly compensated?
Yeah, I feel fairly compensated. It's a fun market, and I get to see the ins and outs of what they do. So you'd be surprised what a lot of people in like the blue collar industry do for fun and just do to get their business out there.
How long have you been doing this?
About 3 years. I was under an apprenticeship for like 5 years before that.
How did you get into it?
I was working at a restaurant, and the guy I used to go to the gym with around the corner did stunt work. We both were filming something. He's like, hey, you want to come on film set? And I was like, yeah, all right. So I just jumped in, learned everything from him. Then he introduced me to somebody else who was bigger, and it just kept growing and growing afterwards.
What are some of the pros and cons of your job?
I would say networking yourself and getting the right network is important, because there's a lot of people that say they can deliver, but once you jump in, you're like, man, he didn't know nothing. And you got to ask yourself if you really want to go to school or not, because the ups and downs of school is you'll get the network for the film industry, but for the outside, the real raw stuff, they're going to want to see examples. You're going to want to have to network with the right people. You got to prove it.
What pieces of advice would you share with anyone interested in doing your role, or just in general? What have you learned?
Go to the big mastermind meetings and stuff like that, because you'll never know if they're like, hey man, could you record me? I need it. Oh, that was much easier. It helps also connecting with other video producers that want to collab, because sometimes they don't want to collab. It's just being honest.
I'm a software engineer.
How long have you been doing it?
About 6 months now.
How much do you make?
I'm at 90,000 salary right now.
Do you feel fairly compensated?
Yes, I do. It's remote, so definitely feel fairly compensated.
What are the other pros and cons of your job?
My team is in Utah, so a big pro is like the diversity. People are also in California. Just a lot of diversity in the team. No cons really. If anything, the time zone. I'm in a different time zone, so I wake up earlier and I get off earlier.
What kind of pieces of advice do you have for others interested in your role?
I would say you really have to have a passion for it. Don't just chase the money. You'll find a team, you'll find a job. As long as you love it, you'll have a great time.
What are your thoughts on a certification versus a college degree?
I personally had a college degree, so I don't know if I could recommend either or, but I definitely say a college degree prepared me. You definitely get so much more prepared in the field rather than what you learn online.